The Edmonton Oilers have now taken a 2-1 series lead over the Dallas Stars. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers is here to talk about how they did it and what it'll take to win the series. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen today. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Oilers, a very busy man these days, Nick Zararis. And Nick, you got to be happy, and Oilers fans have to be happy with their win in Game 3. What was the thing that separated the Oilers from the Stars most in this game?
So they built on what they did a nice job of in game number 2, of absorbing pressure defensively, giving up a lot of volume, but not a lot of quality, and then attacking quickly on the counter. Quite a few of those odd man rushes, the 2 McDavid goals, the 1 Hyman goal. And the Oilers, when they're at their best, are kind of that opportunistic counter-attacking team. And to get that type of production at 5-on-5, to have a game where Draisaitl doesn't pick up a point and you win 6-1, like you said at the top, it's a good feeling to have that they're getting production up and down the lineup from guys who, John Klingberg had 12 games of NHL hockey before the playoffs this year. So when you're getting production from guys who you took flyers on in the middle of the season, it's a good place to be in. And the exciting thing, if you're an Oilers fan, they still have a little room here to squeeze more out of the group. The power play still isn't running great. The penalty kill is the worst of the 4 teams that are still left. So with that, and they're up 2-1 in the series, it's really easy to start talking yourself into, well, if they can get those things going, maybe Florida isn't as scary as it seems right now.
What is your biggest concern after 3 games? I mean, up 2-1, next game's at home, but what has you a little bit concerned?
Someone on Dallas is going to go nuclear at some point. A lot of the guys throughout that lineup, whether it's Rantanen, Robertson, Duchesne, haven't really had moments yet, and largely been a product of the game so far. Game 2 and Game 3, a little more defensive until the dam broke in game number 3. So I expect someone on Dallas to have a moment or two, and it'll be incumbent upon the Oilers to really just absorb that, go with it, and answer. And to their credit, they have been quality, and they have been able to survive the tough stretches. And then when they've had moments where they've needed a play, they found them. And I keep going back to the conversation I was having with someone right after Game 3 against the Kings in the first round, where they were 30 seconds away from being down 3-0 in a series. And we were talking about, well, what does Stan Bowman do to fix the team? They score, they go to overtime, they win that game. They subsequently rattle off 6 in a row there, win the second round series against Vegas. Here they are up 2-1 against Dallas. And they have really put together, the word I keep going back to is professional, that they get the job done. It's not the prettiest because they play a lot of defense, probably a little bit more than you would like to against a team like Dallas, but they've done a really nice job of finding different ways to win, not being overly reliant on any one guy. I mean, Skinner was the guy today. Skinner had a great second period, the most saves he's had in a playoff game, and that's a guy who got sat for 5-6 games over the course of the first 2 rounds. So that's one of the keys to winning in this league this time of year. You got to have, everybody needs to have a moment. I mean, they're up to 18 different guys who've scored a goal in the playoffs, if I remember correctly what they said on the ESPN broadcast.
Yeah, not bad. You talked about the 2 goals by McDavid and Hyman contributing. You also mentioned defense and how there was a volume of shots, but not quality shots. Give me a guy on defense who has quietly helped this team limit the high danger chances.
I really like what Jake Wallman's brought to the Oilers. He's probably their best skating defenseman and really puts himself in good positions to break plays up. to this point in the playoffs, Dallas had been the team that was really attacking off of the rush and playing a little more defense and counterattacking to try and get the puck to their more high-end guys like Rantanen, Robertson, Hintz. In transition, you can create off the rush a little bit more dangerous looks. You get the goalie moving left to right, create those 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, and the Oilers have done a really good job of limiting the stars, of corralling guys to the outside as soon as they get in the zone. And that's really jumped out when you watch the Wallman and Klingberg pair, which wasn't on the team a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And that pair has worked arguably as good as any in the playoffs. And they're playing Brett Kulak the most minutes he's ever played in his entire life this year at 32 years old, I think. Someone who's been a fifth or a sixth defenseman for most of his career, getting up to that 24, 25-minute mark, which is just, it's a good problem to have. And at some point, Matthias Ekholm will come back, and then you raise the conversation of who's going to come out of a defense that's working really well.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, but yes, it is indeed an issue. You talked about the slow start in the series against the Kings. Game 1 obviously was a rough one in this series. What has been the biggest difference between the games that the Oilers have won and the games that the Oilers have struggled through?
They've been a bit more defensive. They've been a little bit more willing to be in their own zone and really try and hem Dallas to the outside. And like we've been talking about here, limit the high danger offense, because when you have a forward group deep enough that you can play Wyatt Johnston on the third line, you have a lot of depth. And the Oilers on paper aren't as talented as Dallas 1-9 up front. And the Oilers, to their credit, have been really good defensively. Skinner, like I had said before, played his best game of the playoffs so far tonight, and that's a good thing to have going your way when the goaltending has really been the concern. I think if I remember correctly, after Friday, the stat was something along the lines of if they get 860 goaltending, they've won every game in the playoffs that they've had 860 goaltending. So they're not asking a whole lot from Skinner or from Pickard when Pickard was in net. And building off of it, and I think that's the big key. They've incrementally gotten better as the playoffs have gone on. Like I watch this team now, and I don't really feel like there's a weak link the way there was last year, where their fourth line was a little bit empty. Their third defensive pair was a little more volatile and explosive. And even Darnell Nurse is having a pretty solid, steady playoffs with no big mistakes. I can't say no big mistakes because the penalty on Hintz and the subjectivity of whether or not that's a dirty play, he should have gotten suspended, whatever. But he's having a quiet playoffs, whereas last year he was the highest variance player in the entire playoffs. So they've had a lot break their way, and they still have room.
It's been 35 years since the Oilers won a Stanley Cup. It's been since 1993 that any Canadian-based team has won the Stanley Cup. Do either of these things put any more pressure on this team right now?
So what I've been telling people is this is McDavid's LeBron year. The Heat went to the finals that first year. LeBron and Wade were there with Bosch, and they lost to the Mavericks, and I think it was 6 games. And then the next year, they went back to the finals. He won MVP. He was the best player in the league, and you get these man on the mission type storylines, and there's a reason these movies are fun. There's a reason Sylvester Stallone and Schwarzenegger made all those movies in the 80s. Everybody likes the one guy doing everything he can to overcome the odds. And it sounds weird to say a guy who's got the most points of anyone in the playoffs probably could be playing a little bit better, but he probably does have a little bit more to give here. And you got to really start to believe. And I wouldn't say outside pressure in respect to winning for the Oilers, winning for Canada. I would say it's an accountability thing. It's McDavid knows he's the best player in the world, and you got to have the team success if you want to be in that all-time great conversation. And this is a guy who, from the time he was 5 or 6 years old, was already comparing himself to Sidney Crosby, who was, 17 years old at the time. And he understands the responsibility and the expectations of being the next great Canadian hockey player within the lineage of going from Gretzky to Lemieux to Crosby, McDavid. And McKinnon is making a valiant effort to be in that conversation, but I still take McDavid when you see games like this and moments like this. And he's slowly but surely found who he is as a professional, as a leader. And I think the documentary that Amazon did a nice job of portraying that and giving him a bit of depth beyond the robot most people view him as.
Yeah, and that certainly is kind of revealing for a change. So what's the key to winning this series, finishing it out?
The defense has to keep doing its job because Dallas is going to keep pushing, and the desperation will only increase with each passing game. Dallas had a really good second period in this game, and the Oilers were able to withstand that. Stu did a tremendous job and gave them a chance to win. And really, this time of year, and this will sound a bit simple, but if you're in a coin flip game 50-50 this time of year, you feel pretty good about taking that when you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Bush, and you're going to get Ekholm back at some point. If you're in all of these games and you have a chance to win all these games, that's really all you can ask for.
Fair enough. Nick, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Locked On Oilers is available on all the major podcasting platforms on YouTube. My Twitter and Instagram are just Nick Zararis. My name, Nick, Zararis, and my TikTok is Nick Zararis Sports.
All right, Nick, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. I love eating out, but not at the expense of my future financial security. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.